everyone, and thank you very much for watching. Liam Hartery here today with another episode of Presenting Champions. Today is episode 221, I believe. Today I'm joined by Jose Shorty Torres, absolute legend of MMA. I'm truly honored, truly blessed to have him on the show today. Obviously, UFC veteran, seven-time MMA champion, including two times for Titan FC. Been in there with the best of the best over his MMA career. He's achieved a great deal, more than some fighters do in their whole career, and he's still going strong. Next fight is the 18th of March, I believe, for Brave CF, which is where Jose is currently competing as of the time of this interview. So we've got some great things to talk about in the world of MMA, but also, as always, with my interviews, it's going to be a little bit deeper than just a fight interview, and we're going to get into the mindset of that it takes to achieve greatness. So, Champ, that's enough of me talking about you in third person. Sorry about that. Thank you for coming on the show, and it's great to have you here today. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. The honor's all mine, and it's the 9th of March. And going to a new country, man, is a phenomenal thing. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's start there. I mean, let's start with the up and coming fight because great opportunity, great opponent, yet new country. Share with us how your preparations are going and what you're looking forward to most about the fight, please.
For me, I'm excited because I'm fighting another taller person. I have a Napoleon complex, so I'm a small guy that likes to take on big things. So the taller they are, the funner it is for me to watch them fall. And I mean, who doesn't like to yell out timber? But the biggest thing with this is it's another opponent, and this is a contender fight. So whoever wins this is fighting for the belt next. And I to me as a champion and with the champion's mindset, I don't want to face just the average Joe. I don't want to face, some guy in the division that's popular or whatever the case may be. I believe you should fight the numbers. I fight whoever's next in line or whatever my promotion tells me to fight. Like, I'm not a person that denies fight. I've taken fights even while injured. And for me, Nicolas Nitabele, he's long, he's tall, keeps his distance. He's next up in line as well. And whoever wins this goes for the belt. So I'm excited to, get another test to see if I truly am ready for that title belt.
Absolutely. Incredible. Well, good luck for the fight. I'll be cheering you on. Talk to us a little bit about obviously competing in a new country as well, Israel, I believe. I mean, talk to us about the reception you're expecting from the crowd there, what it's going to be like. Because obviously fighting's taking you to some amazing places. We'll touch on that some more later on. Specifically, this one, fighting in a new location as well, it's sort of an intangible benefit of competing, I'd imagine. What are your thoughts on that side of things as well, please?
To me, I'm a shorty from Chicago, so I never expected not just to leave the city, but the state, nevertheless the country. So being able to travel to so many different countries and Brave allowing me to do so, I mean, it's a fighter's dream come true. Most fighters, especially in the States, only fight in the States, maybe some big countries like, the UK or Brazil, and that's kind of pretty much about it. For me, I've been able to travel everywhere in different regions, different continents. So now going to a different country that I never even dreamt of going to, Israel. I mean, Tel Aviv's a beautiful place, and I'm excited to go to it. For me, I'm an American, and naturally traveling overseas, you kind of get some scrutiny being the American. There's a lot of bad talk of American fighters, and they always try to use the American as the pedestal to boast their guide. I'm excited to do that because it makes me, even though I might not be the underdog in this fight, it makes me fight more because I know they're trying to take advantage, or at least my opponent, and possibly even the future opponents and crowd to take advantage of me. So I have to make my presence known, but also know that, for example, my first fight in Brave was in Jordan. I was fighting a guy from Iraq, Amir Albazi, an Iraqi refugee, which you go to Jordan, it's many Arabics, Middle Easterners, and they just, they support their guys. So when I came out, they're like, from USA, Jose Shorty Torres, all you hear is, bro. And for me, that was my first time ever receiving a negative, reception. I was just like, oh, this is very different. And then after the fight, you help entertain the crowd, and then after they just respect you. It's just fanfare, and they're like, oh man, this guy is awesome, we love him. So for me, I love being able to win over the crowd, and I'm just excited to just enjoy a new country and enjoy new people, the culture, and everything around it.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite place that fighting has taken you? I ask this because it's kind of inspiring for like a lot of the up and coming individuals out there as well who might be watching this and listening to this. as soon as we've started on this, but then we'll get into some other things. But so far, does it, is it a favorite place that you've competed in terms of the reception that you've received, or in terms of the culture, or do they all have different benefits in different ways, type of thing?
I think one of my favorite places reception wise that I fought is in Bahrain just because everyone kind of considers me a native there because I do have a place there. I do train there a lot. I'm actually going to go there for my training camp for this fight mid-February. And so when I go there, my posters in places, I walk in the hotels, people notice me and I'm like, oh, this is different. I actually get more reception and support here than sometimes I do in Chicago. This is my own city, and I have paintings of me in Chicago. So it is very different, but I think my most fun experience fighting, this is my first time out of the country, was in Brazil, but it wasn't like Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro. It was Foz do Iguaçu, which is one of the natural wonders of the world. And it's, the country is different in every country. It's like there's the city life and then there's like the country life. Country life in the States, you got some farms, you got some cornfields. Okay, that's the country or some suburbs. In Brazil, it's a rainforest. So for me, that was a culture shock. I jump in the river, little I know I'm swimming with piranhas. I don't know, or I'm at the edge of a cliff, rappelling and doing things. So it was definitely a huge culture shock to me to come in from the city, the hood, the ghetto, going to a tropical rainforest where everyone's super humble, super helpful. And it was, man, it was a good time. So that's probably my favorite place I fought, but the best fanfare so far has been in Bahrain.
Absolutely amazing. That is an amazing insight because obviously people watch the fight, people, other fighters know what it's like to travel. People might see it on your social media, but for fans and for up and coming fighters and things, it's just something they don't see from that point of view, what it was like in the rainforest. Absolutely amazing. So one of the things that I mentioned probably when we were setting this up was about the mindset side of things. Now, obviously, with Brave, you're going for the belt, you're continuing to push towards greatness. You've already achieved a great deal, but obviously you're pushing for more, and I know that's obvious to you. But talk to us a little bit about like your mindset on the build up to a big fight, how you're mentally prepared. We'll talk about the physical training as well, but the mindset thing is something that's unseen, I think. So it's very interesting to get into. In your own words, how do you mentally prepare for a big fight, a big opportunity?
For me, I've always looked at it in one way, and I'm happy that I've always looked at it in one way. Like, for example, during COVID, you had world championship fights where there's no one in the crowd, and it's practically your team, you, your opponent, and the referee. And that's pretty much it. And then you have events that, for example, one time I fought at Staples Center, that was the biggest crowd I've ever fought in. And there's thousands of people and then millions watching worldwide. For me, the same thing's going to happen no matter if there's thousands, millions, or my mother in the crowd. It's me, an opponent, and the referee. And that's all that's inside the cage. No matter what is outside, I have to worry about what's inside. So for me, mentally, I kind of, I don't know if you ever see like video games where it's like, oh, it's a big crowd, like fight night, it's a big crowd. And then when it goes inside the ring, it's kind of like a black theme. It's like a shadow. You can't really see anything besides what's in the ring with you. And for me, that's the mindset I try to have. And I also try my best to localize my hearing to just my corner or my coach or coaches. I try not to pay attention to the crowd and what they say. I try not to pay attention to, my opponent's corner. I try my best to just focus on the fight in the moment. The part leading up to it, I don't know. I've always had a not an egotistical mindset, but a confident mindset of going, I know what I need to do, no matter what the situation is going to come. There's going to be anxiety naturally building up to the fight. That's natural. There's going to be bad days. You're going to have little injuries. You're going to have bad weight cuts or problems where you just don't want to get up some days. And some days are just a bad day in the office, and that changes your mindset. But no, that's today, maybe even tomorrow, maybe even for the rest of the week. But that's not fight day. And so let's do our best to keep ourselves in control mentally so we can have some controlled chaos when we are inside that cage, locked in with one other opponent trying to do the same thing to me. So for me, I try my best to just have the same mindset. No, if it is a bad day, it's okay. I have another day tomorrow. I have weeks until tomorrow. Hell, I'm facing little injuries now. It's like, okay, cool. I have still 7 weeks until the fight. There's no reason to overdo anything right now. Let's control myself so I can have better controlled chaos when fight day does come.
Absolutely. It's amazing. It's an amazing mindset towards it. I love that. Like I said to you, I mean, it's something that's a little bit unseen. People don't necessarily get an insight into that. So that's amazing. Now we'll move on shortly into some more specific fights of yours. But before we do, while we're talking about mindset, as I said to you, I'm all about hope, inspiration, positivity. with these interviews. So, you've achieved a lot in your life so far. The best is yet to come, by the way. I don't put that in there, but you've achieved a lot. So, if somebody were to come to you and want advice on, like, saying, I want to achieve a big dream, whether it's in fighting, but I think the principles of achieving something are quite similar depending on what you do, and it's the technical stuff that changes. If you had to give advice to somebody who wants to succeed at something in life, what would you say to those people? Now, I know this is a very big question, but I'm putting this out there around, obviously around the world and everything. So we have a unique opportunity to touch people, hopefully share a few gems of wisdom if you get where I'm going with this. So, in that sort of imaginary scenario, somebody comes up to you and says, look, how do I achieve something big that I'm aiming for? What would you say to those people? What would be sort of two or three essential ingredients that you would give those people, if that makes sense?
I think there's three big things. Know that every time you start something, more than likely you're gonna be bad at. That's just how it is. I mean, I know a lot of people, especially in the sport of MMA, they're phenomenal wrestlers, but then they go into the sport of kickboxing, learning to stand up, and they get demolished, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't the sport for me." It's like, dude, you were probably bad at wrestling when you first started too, and you got to this level. You could do the same thing in stand up fighting and kickboxing, Muay Thai boxing, and so on. But you have to give yourself time. You have to get beat up. You gotta take these losses to hopefully finally win inside the cage of the ring. So it's gonna take time, and know that if you have a bad day, it's okay. So just starting off, or even me years later, I've been doing this sport since I was 4, 26 years later, I'm 30 years old, still doing it. You have fighters that sometimes best me. I remember sparring with Muhammad Mokaev, and him and I would go back and forth and have a lot of fun. He's literally the younger me. He just did it much faster, and I'm very happy for him. And that's, just evolution. There's going to be somebody who does the same thing he did, but 2 years before, and then so on and so on. And I remember one day he like head kicked me, and I was like, oh man, if he's head kicking me, this is bad. People are like, dude, it's okay. Like, these are just shots. These are things you're going to learn. Sometimes people are younger and you are going to beat you up. Sometimes people older, you're going to beat you up. It's just part of the process. So know that no matter when you start, there's going to be good days, going to be bad days, you're going to keep on pushing. Two is, with those bad days, you have to remember your purpose. Yeah, we're going to lose motivation. Yeah, we're going to have those really hard weight cuts or hard times where life is going to come into play. But I say, if you are motivated enough, you will literally do everything in your possibility to get the job done. I mean, I'm pretty sure for you, I know for sure for me, especially in wrestling in college, man, I did so many things where I look back at it, I'm like, how the hell did I do that? How did I, cut all this weight really bad because I wasn't educated on how to cut weight, still passed all my classes with A's and honors, and was able to semi live a social life and have a partner at a time. And it's like, dude, that's a lot. Like, I can't even do some of that stuff now. I look back at it, I was like, nope, not even gonna do it. But I was in a full ride. I was in a scholarship. If I didn't get all A's in my classes, my scholarship would have been gone. If I didn't compete well and make weight in college wrestling, I would have lost my athletic scholarship. So it's the purpose of why you're doing it. For me, I wanted to graduate and live a life at the same time. So it's the purpose is that's going to drive you. When you have your bad day, no matter what, even if you don't want to, no matter how much you don't want to, you're going to somehow find a way to push yourself to get it done. And lastly, and I think first and foremost, is have fun. No matter what you do in life, especially something worth having, it's going to be really hard. And I think I posted the other day, and given I'm not going to quote myself verbatim, but whatever you want to achieve, it's going to take the equal amount of sacrifice to achieve it. And the crazy part about that, it's a gamble. Even if you give out the exact same you're going to receive, you still might not get your goal. You still might not get that prize possession that you always wanted. But it's the process of gambling and trying your best to go and doing it. But you have to try your best to have fun and enjoy the journey. And I always tell people, for example, you might not make the end goal, the dream, but if you don't start, you'll never finish and you'll never get anywhere. And if you don't start, honestly, you don't stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. Time passes you by, so you end up getting left behind. But if you start, even if you don't make it to the end goal, you might make it somewhere in between, and you might find something better for you in the long run. It might not be the ultimate goal that we all desire, but that's why it's become a prize. That's why it's become a championship. That's why it's a trophy, because you have so many people that are just as motivated as you are with their purpose to keep on pushing forward. But first and foremost, you have to have fun doing it, because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it in the first place? So I think that is a huge, huge thing that for me, I'm a big anime kid. I'm a kid at heart. I'm a big cartoon guy, Power Rangers, Dragon Balls, these stuff like that. So Me, I'm pretty much that guy that's always trying my best to be very genuine and humble and gentle and kind and all that stuff. So I need to have fun. I need to play. And for me, even in my hardest days and my hardest times, even when I cry and all that stuff, I just laugh about it. I'm just like, oh, that sucked. All right, well, it's time to get up and do some things. So you got to be able to have fun, make fun of yourself, have fun of the opportunities that you have, even the bad ones, and just go from there.
Absolutely. Wow. I mean, there's a lot contained in everything you said there. I knew that would be a good answer, but that was a great answer because I love asking that question because you can never guess what's going to come back. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you for sharing that with our audience all around, well, all around the world. Moving on to a couple of other things, a little bit more sort of fight specific and everything as well. Obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, you've won a number of titles. You've achieved, well, you've achieved a lot, and you're still driving forward. But are there particular ones that mean more to you than others? Are there favorites? Are there, out of everything you've won, titles and things, are there ones that are particularly highlights for you in some way more than some of the others, or do they all have a different meaning type of thing? If you get what I'm going with this, I think it's a
Um,
I think with.
For me, becoming the first ever two-time IMF world champ was nice, but I didn't know how big it was until I became a professional, where people were signing me or noticing how talented I was. Until I started training with like the people like Khabib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev and all these guys, and I'm like, hey, I might not be winning, but I'm somewhat holding my own against bigger guys, given they might be playing nice to me, but they're respecting me, and that's a huge thing, especially looking at where their careers have gone at now. And then I believe becoming the first ever simultaneous two weight class champion for Titan FC, and still today the only. Um, Man, it's so my favorite fighter growing up, and even still now, is Manny Pacquiao. And him being the small guy, having the Napoleon complex that I have, and being all these big guys, and for him taking all the different weight classes, and he could have obtained easily a lot more, but he skipped a few just because they were just funner fights for him. He fought the next guy in line, and I try to use that blueprint for my career. So for me, when I won the championship for Titan FC, guy was 7-2. Okay, knocked him out. Next fight, who are you fighting? Oh, we want a smart fight. Feels like, no, I want the next guy in line. I fought 18-2, Pedro Nobre. I was only 3-0, knocked him out in I think 86 seconds. I'm like, all right, cool. No one that's I believe worthy up to that record. Let me bumped up, beat that champion, and then I defended it. So I did so many things with Titan because I didn't want to just show as a champion, but a very dominant one at that. And even if I failed, to show that I was willing to do both weight classes. I didn't want to be, you know, and this is not throwing shade at all, but like Conor McGregor being able to win a belt and then immediately bumping up. Hey, if you have the popularity to do that, that's awesome. But for me, it's not a popularity contest. I want to fight and win. I'm the fighter back before social media came out, where fighting made you popular. Fighting the best made you one of the best, not, because I'm popular and, I have good social media and this and that I should be able to fight anyone. No, I fight the next guy in line and I want to show I'm champion. Max Holloway in the featherweight division, pretty much dominating the entire division before he finally lost. Like, I want that. I eventually want to go out on my shield that way as well. But man, I all my belts and trophies, looking at it from the long run, and I have them all stacked up in my room too, is, I'm happy about them, but I never thought I achieved any of this. I just tried. There was a difference. I listened to my coach, took the advice, and just kind of went forward from there. I didn't think about, I need to do this, I need to do that. When I did start thinking that way, is when I made things a lot more complicated it should be. So I just fought whoever was next in line. I went by the ranking system and called out the best, and promoters loved me. And I just had a lot of fun with it. So even my belts and trophies, and I think Mike Tyson has a quote. He goes, "Oh, they're all materialistic. They're worthless to me." For me, the belt's nice. It looks good for fanfare, but it's just me fighting the best, and that's all I want to do is fight the best. The belt is just a nice little trophy to put on the side, but I'm probably gonna give it away anyways. So all my belts that I have, I don't even think I have them in my house. I think my brother has all of my amateur belts, and my two Titan FC belts, I believe, are in the trunk of my car because usually kids want to see them. And that's pretty much about it. My two gold medals are hung up somewhere in my room, but I have no clue where. So for me, the trophies and medals are just materialistic, but it's a nice sign of achievement to go, hey, wow, can't believe I forgot I did that. I didn't expect to do any of this. I just tried to have fun and look where I'm at today.
Wow. That is very cool. I mean, first of all, in the trunk of your car, okay, I wasn't expecting that. I thought you say in the closet or something, but I get where you're coming from. To underpin that, just very briefly, slightly off topic, it's a theme that I've seen over and over again with these interviews with people who've won the most stuff, right? So people who generally, I'm slightly generalizing, but people who've won the most world titles, they all say they enjoy the process more than focusing on the result. You know, it's one thing you just hear over and over and over again. So it's a very, very powerful lesson for everyone watching. Manufacturing my favorite fighter too, by the way. Just as a
Hey,
but you know, just randomly. But anyway, it's a brilliant life lesson. Thank you for sharing it again. Absolutely fantastic. Um, Continuing in that vein of testing yourself, because that's obviously a big part of what we're talking about here. Toughest fights, this comes up in every interview I do. Toughest fights obviously is not just, you know, the hardest hitter or whatever. I mean, it can be technical, it can be something that's going on in your life outside of the cage that obviously you have to push through. You know, it comes in many forms. That's what I'm trying to say, as you know all too well. Are there any that stand out as being the most challenging? Because obviously you're fighting the best over and over again, as you just mentioned. So when you look at that list, are there some that stand out more than others as being more challenging, or are they all just challenging in different ways, type of thing?
for sure, and I'll definitely get to that. I want to just talk about the belts real quick when it comes to that mindset. I've noticed, and especially with me in high school, when I tried to be a state place, or excuse me, try to qualify for state in wrestling, my goal was to make it to state. It wasn't to be a state champion. So when I got to state, I was like, oh, what do I do now? They're like, dude, you still have to wrestle. And then I immediately lost because my mindset wasn't about winning. It was just getting there. Same thing when I was in college. I'm like, oh, I wanna be in the national tournament. I had qualified for nationals, and somebody's like, what place are you trying to place? I'm like, what? I didn't know I was good enough to place. And little did I know I did place fourth in the nation, but I could have placed second, if not for sure first. And it's like, ah, but then when I got to different promotions, I didn't think about, hey, I want to be champion, because most of the time when people become champion, that's why they end up losing so quickly, because they lose their hunger. They received what they wanted to receive. Their meal is done, and they're like, oh, I got to defend this. All right, well, let's just see how it goes. And to them, it's another fight compared to another challenge of their will, their strength, their power, and everything that led up to that point. That's why you have certain champions, John Jones, there's Silva, Demetrius Johnson, that are so phenomenal at defending the belt multiple times, because they still have that drive that they always want to be champion. They don't just want to be champion. So I think that is a huge thing. And even for me right now, like, I want to be champion, but I want to stay and live my life as a champion until it's finally done. But to answer your question about the toughest fights, I have three in mind. One for me, I think when it comes to the toughest fights, one was when I bumped up to bantamweight to claim my second belt. I was a little egotistical in the first round. I was like, oh, this guy doesn't really hit that hard. I'll be fine. And I don't know if you ever play Super Smash Brothers, but he like Falcon punched me. It took him like 3 seconds to charge this punch. Somehow didn't see it coming. And I fell the way I fell. Little did I know, I ended up dislocating, or excuse me, tearing my MCL on my right leg. But when I got up, I was like, all right, cool. It's my turn to retaliate. I went to punch him. The very first punch I landed after being dropped, I broke my hand, which I still have the scar from today. But it's a 5-round fight. It's 25 minutes. So after the first round's over, my corner's like, hey, why aren't you throwing your right hand? He's mic'd up, so I don't want to speak loud. I was like, I broke my hand. And he's like, okay, well, I want you to start elbowing this, that. I'm just like, okay, cool. I go to stand up. I don't know anything about my leg. I know about my hand. I felt the clicks, but I shake out my left leg, no problem. I go to shake out my right leg. My right leg just goes straight up and down. And I'm like, what? That's not a good thing. And then I kind of dragged it out in the second round, and you start getting punched in the face. You forget. Little I know, I'm punching, he's kicking, I have to block. I'm just like, screw it. I'm like, what's his name? I'm like Mickey Ward versus Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti broke his hand, and he was just like, after so many rounds, we just started punching because it became numb. And so for me, I kept breaking my hand over and over and over again, but I won the next 3 out of 4 rounds. And so I won a majority decision, 3-2. And so I won my second championship. So that was definitely my toughest fight, because I had to go through adversity, torn MCL and broken hand, all on my power side. I was hindered, but I still pushed through, and then felt all the pain extremely after the fight, with surgeries and stuff like that. The second hardest fight was the one immediately after that, because I was having a really hard time with the UFC when I was trying to be signed by them. They would call me with unfair deals or call me when I'm injured, knowing that I can't fight. But it was almost kind of like they were mocking me. I'm like, hey, I can't fight for 3 months. They're like, okay, cool. So you want to fight next weekend? I'm like, all right, I feel like you just ignored everything I said. I can't fight for the next 3 months. Oh, okay, cool. How about in 2 weeks? All right, I feel like this is not getting across to you. And it kept on happening with different opponents. So I was getting very frustrated. So I thought, because my other, I guess, co-workers that were fighting in the event were being called up to the UFC last minute. I was like, oh, I'm probably not even gonna fight this guy. Like I'm excited for him, but I'm also not, because to me, he was a downgrade in opponents record wise compared to the other guys. So I'm like, I'm not motivated to fight him. They're going to call me up to the UFC. They never did. By the time the fight comes, the first round starts, and it was a close round, but he won the round. And I remember my coach is like, Shorty, you need to wake up. Come on, you need to do this. And I just wasn't motivated for the fight because I was upset that I didn't bump up. Again, that's when I started putting too many demands on myself. And that's when I made things a lot more complicated instead of just going in there and fighting. And my nutritionist, Louis Giordano, comes up to me and goes, Shorty, if you don't do this, you will not make it in the UFC. If you don't win this fight, or if you don't start pushing and trying, you will 100% lose. And there goes your dreams. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. This is a huge thing. I can't make it a pity party. So I ended up pushing the pace. I won the fight in the fourth round, and I took some injuries a lot more than I should have, made the fight a lot harder than I should have. And then even after, the UFC still didn't call me. So mentally, I was just kind of like, nah. So I think that fight, I made it a lot harder than it should have been because of my mindset entering and even during the fight. Um, and then I think the last, and I believe it's not the hardest per se and toughest fight, but it's the hardest to take, was my only loss as a professional against Alex Perez. I was really being belittled by the UFC mentally, that I was just like, I don't even want to do, again, I'm putting myself at a pity party, given it still was very unfair treatment, but I was still going to fight. And with after ultimatums and all these different things behind the scenes, was kind of in a sense forced to fight. I'm like, well, I have no choice. Let me go in there and fight. Monday shows up. I'm fighting at the Staples Center, in the States. That's a huge thing. It's where the Lakers play. And I get there and it's Monday. The fight is on Saturday, pay-per-view. And mentally, I just want to go home. I'm on a 33 fight winning streak. But mentally, I want to go home because I'm just like, I don't even care about this fight. I just want to make weight, get paid so the UFC's happy. And then no matter what happens in the cage, I just want to go home. I don't care. I'll be 3-1 in the UFC. I'm already, there. And in the fight, it was almost like everything was played in slow motion. Like I saw everything coming, besides the first body punch. That was actually really well planned. But after that, I saw everything coming, and I'm like, come on, wake up. Nothing would activate and nothing would happen. And then little I know, I'm dropped on the floor, and Frank Trigg, the referee at the time, is stopping the fight. And I'm just like, did I just lose? And after that I was like mentally blank, for the next few hours, where I'm just like, why didn't I wake up? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do so many things? Like I saw everything coming. It wasn't that he was a super skilled opponent. I believe he was, but to the point where I easily could have retaliated, but never did, even just throwing a punch back. So I think for me, when you talk about the mindset, is a huge thing, because I always tell fighters, especially amateurs, we all have the same tools. In boxing, you only have two hands. In MMA, we have the 8 limbs and so many more with takedowns and submissions, but we have the same tools. Why am I beating you with my tools over yours? Yeah, it's a little bit of a chess match for sure, but it's a mindset of being able to use those inside the cage and not just inside the gym, where it doesn't really matter. In the gym, you're pretty, who cares if you lose? You're just having fun, whatever. So you're going to try a lot of dumb stuff in practice because it's fun. But inside the cage, a lot of people tighten up, they freeze, and it is a huge thing. So when I think inside the cage, especially when you talk about the big moments, it's mental warfare. So if you're not prepared for that, if you can't control your own mindset, then it's going to be chaos. If you can control your mindset, you're going to have controlled chaos in there, and hopefully it goes in your favor. And I think that was easily, even still to this day, it's like, come on, could have done this, could have done that. And that's why I work on my mindset so much, so I don't let that happen again.
Wow, that is an amazing answer again. I love it that we're getting into the deeper side of things here, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there who put out some very good technical content about, MMA and about all sports really. Yes, I do touch on that, but like getting into the deeper side of things, what inspires me, and hopefully it helps the people who are listening to it. So that's not even a question. I'm just saying, fantastic, because this is already way above like my expectation. I knew it would be good. Thank you for being such an open book and everything, with everything that's going on in your head as well, because that is a personal thing. Let's touch on the UFC a little bit now, just to sort of mention before we get into that. I don't necessarily dwell on anything negative in my interviews in terms of that, because the UFC obviously is a positive in a sense. You made it to that level and everything, but at the same time, obviously with the being let go, I've seen some interviews, including with Ariel on his show with the big screen and everything, where
Hmm.
you've mentioned about this. Not the best experience. That's probably an understatement of the year, but not the best experience for you. But let's just talk about the two sides of it, like the positives you got from being in the UFC. But let's touch on obviously what happened when you were let go from them, because it's sort of an enduring thing that people are curious about to this day, even though you're um, making a positive outfit with Brave and everything else, everything else you're doing has been amazing since. So I'm just giving that a little bit of context of not just saying flatly, or what happened with the UFC, just giving it the context of why I'm asking. But yeah, in your own words, let's talk about the positives first, and then like some of your favorite moments in UFC, some of what you enjoyed about it, and then we can touch on obviously, yeah, what happened with the release and everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna kind of mix them all together. For me, finally taking a fight with the UFC was very hard because it was a 9 day notice,
Mm.
and it was 26 pounds that I had to lose, which is about 11 to 12 kg, and that's a lot of weight for a flyweight to go on down. And so I was convinced by my nutritionist to take the fight, and I'm like, hey, I'm signed to the UFC. Social media blows up a little bit. People are happy for me. And again, like you said, everyone, especially here in the States and even in the UK, they go, "Hey, you made it to the UFC. You're at the pinnacle of the sport because that's the most popular promotion in the world." And I'm happy about it. I mean, who doesn't want to? I mean, I'm pretty sure you've received a question like, "Hey, do you do UFC?" And finally, instead of saying, "Do you do MMA?" And finally, when people were like, "Hey, do you do UFC?" I was like, "Actually, yes, yes, I do UFC." So that was definitely the upside to that deal. But when I got signed, I had no training camp, 9 day notice, and they kind of threatened me and go, "Hey, if you don't make weight, you're going to be cut." The week before, Mackenzie Dern just missed weight by 7 pounds. I believe that's about like 2.5 kg. And it's like, dude, she missed weight. She's still in the UFC. Oh, this is kind of bias here, but all right, sure, whatever. At the time, they weren't really focused on flyweights. They were kind of going down. And so take the fight. I make weight. I'm honestly surprised that I made weight too. It was the worst weight cut I've ever done in my life. And those Darren Till cyborg videos of them crying, I easily had multiple of those. I just don't film stuff like that. But I end up going in there, not having the best performance just because mentally I wasn't prepared for a fight. And nevertheless, somebody shorter than me. I've never fought someone shorter than me. It definitely caught me off guard. And even being dropped in the fight, but second round, I started slowly coming back, started getting my edge, and he picked me up. I knew what he was doing, and I decided to hold on, thinking we're going to scramble when we get on the ground. But Dummy takes me backwards and has me fall on top of his head. And no, I was like, oh, he's out. Well, I got to finish the job. I finished with the TKO and then get on Ariel Helwani's show. People were kind of mocking me a little bit. They're like, oh, you won by accident. You were losing the fight. I was like, man, I mean, yeah, technically. I mean, I lost by accident. I mean, he did it to himself, but that's also part of being a fighter, of not doing crazy things like that just to make it a flashy show. So it is what it is. You know what? Won by accident, I'll take it. So I was like, hey, I get a win bonus. So win's a win. So I go and UFC tells me, hey, you're not going to fight until the end of the year. This is maybe July. I'm like, okay, cool. Get fat, get happy, enjoy myself. I'm helping some of the fighters when I was at American Top Team still. And then they go, hey, you're going to fight in 20 days against Alex Perez. I go, I don't know. I mean, man, I just had a really last minute weight cut. I just did you guys a favor. I'm thinking you're going to help me out too. They go, you either take this fight or you don't fight until next year. And next year does not mean January. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm receiving the very bare minimal paycheck for the UFC, which is the entry paycheck. And I'm like, oh man, I need the fight. I need the money, especially if I'm out doing a training camp. I need to pay for something. So I started doing this training camp. California says I'm red flagged, wasn't gonna be allowed to fight because I just had an extreme weight cut. Somehow, a couple of days later, UFC convinces them for me to fight, go in there. Obviously, I lose the fight. It doesn't go well. Now, for me, mentally, it was my first fight in I think it was almost about 8 years, So I'm just like, man, I haven't lost a fight in 8 years. This is different. I need to mentally take care of myself. So the UFC is like, all right, cool. Yeah, we'll give you a call back. You have 2 more fights in your contract. We'll figure it out. And so I start doing mental health videos. I start kind of doing what we're doing now, but talking to myself, but giving advice to other people. And one day I'm doing a bunch of mental health videos, having fun with it, different topics. And one day I see DJ be traded to ONE FC. And I was like, DJ's being traded. Ben Askren's coming in. One, Dana White was talking smack about Ben Askren. And two, he was also talking smack about DJ, saying, he's scared to fight TJ Dillashaw, this, that. And I looked at it as, wait, they traded the best champion, and not just the flyweight division, but the entire UFC, because he had the most title defenses, and he was still co-main event, which is crazy. Who else do we have? We don't have a Conor McGregor. We don't have a Colby Covington. We don't have a Jorge Masvidal. We don't have highlight guys. Joseph Benavidez is great, but he's already lost 2 or 3 times to the champion. What's the point of him going up there? And so I was like, man, I made a video. I was like, you know what? I think they're going to start cutting the flyweight division. Little did I know that was talking bad about the promotion, even though you had fighters talking smack about Dana, you had fighters talking smack about the UFC, but I was giving, I guess, exact UFC details, and I didn't know that. It was just an assumption. I just ended up being right. And they go, no, we're not, we're not going to cut the division. MMA Junkie sharing it, BJPen.com is sharing it, my video's blowing up. And then out of nowhere, the UFC is like, you know what? We are cutting the division. And you know what? You're first. You're out of here. I was like, okay, well, let me bump up. I was a bantamweight champion. They're like, your first fight, you won by an accident, and your second fight, you look like crap. No, man, sorry. Bye-bye. We don't want you. And so they cut me, and I'm like, well, that's really unfair. I was like, no offense. You look at my resume. If I was any other weight class, 55, especially lightweight, I would have been promoted like crazy. But because I was a flyweight, a division they didn't really care about, they belittled me and really demasculated me and cut me. So the only benefit I got from the UFC was to say I am a UFC veteran, that I still keep my bio, because most fighters know UFC, or most ordinary fans, should I say, know the UFC. But besides that, that's pretty much about it. So I'm able to use the name. And then when I transitioned to Brave, man, the respect I got from Brave is what I expected the pinnacle of the sport, the UFC, to do for me. And then not just Brave paying me more, but you look at other promotions, you hear Bellator paying more, you hear Ryzen paying more, ONE FC paying more, and it's like, man, UFC, bare knuckle. You look at, I think they just made a post today of Chad Mendes making $600,000 in his bare knuckle debut, and Francis Ngannou, his last fight with UFC, made $600,000, and it's like, oh man, this is crazy, So UFC has been exploded by a lot of things, but then after, obviously, I put out a lot more details, and even when I was in UFC, I was putting out things like we're being treated unfairly, this, that. So they didn't like the negative talk, but sadly, I was a no name to the UFC compared to Jorge Masvidal that did the same exact thing, but then when they finally paid him, out of nowhere, he shut up about everything. Same thing with some other fighters. That's why I kind of praise Francis Ngannou right now for not re-signing with the UFC and going, guys, one, I'm the best champion in the world. I'm the scariest man on the planet. I don't need you, and you're not giving me benefits. You're just going to pay me more to, in a sense, shut me up. No, that's not my thing. I grew up poor, and I can be poor again. So for him, he's like, I'm just going to go somewhere else and have my pride take my morals with me. And, for me, that's what I did when I went to Brave, and, I continue to do so.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that. I've got all the respect in the world for the way that you spoke out about it and everything. By the way, I mean that's very brave thing to do. And well, I mean, there's a lot of things you said there, and obviously, like, yeah, with the UFC, I mean, obviously, I've got respect for like everything that they've done for the sport, in a sense of growing the sport and making it appeal to like the casual fan, basically, and all of that type of thing. But at the same time, there's quite a few people I've had on the show. I've heard about these various sort of low ball sort of tactics, and I'm not going to get into that here, but it makes sense. Speaking out about them, amazing. Turning a negative into a positive, amazing. Did those experiences? I mean, did you use those experiences as fuel to, well, basically to achieve a lot of what you've achieved since then? I mean, is that something that you went through? Okay, they dismissed me, belittled me, treated me badly, whatever, all the things you just said. I'm going to now use that as proving a point, if you get what I mean. Did that type of thing come into it after being released, or I
It
didn't?
was
Sorry, go on.
no, I'm sorry. It was a little hard because when I first left the UFC, my mindset was still UFC. Since I was 4 years old, that's all I wanted to do was be in that promotion. So growing up, my mindset was WEC, then UFC, and always UFC. Now they have a flyweight division. I could make that. And then when I got released, I'm like, okay, I've reached the pinnacle of the sport. What's next? These, in a sense, sub-tier promotions, or in my mindset, that was my thought of every other promotion outside the UFC, Bellator, Ryzen, Brave, what in the one and all these, different promotions. But then I started to realize it's not that they're subpar, they're just smaller. They're not as popular. They're paying more, they're respecting you a lot better, and they're taking care of their fighters compared to the UFC that one is being sued as a monopoly, and then two is yes, you're 100% right. They did so much to bring the sport up, and I'm not at all knocking that. I believe they made some phenomenal fighters. They made some amazing careers, some legacies, this, that. But first and foremost, you cannot have a promotion without fighters. You cannot have fights without fighters. And the bad thing is, yes, we're not the brightest, humans in the world, and that's why we fight for a living, but we don't have people advocating for health insurance for us, all these things. And I believe the UFC, because they are the most popular, the pedestal still of the sport, they should be able to try their best to implement something like that. But they haven't. Or if not, worse comes to worse, compensate us like boxing compensates their fighters. Boxing is nowhere near as popular as what it used to be, but you still have fighters like Canelo and Tyson Fury making 30 million one fight, and even people on the undercard co-main events still making 1 million, 2 million a fight, compared to you have a co-main event here maybe making 200,000. It is a very, very big gap. I think there was one photo of Donald Cerrone had 30 or 40 plus fights. It was one of his last fights in the UFC. I think he made 300,000. Amazing. Canelo fought that same day, made 30 million for less that time. And it's like, what's the difference when UFC is the most popular sport in the world, or at least MMA is. So it's one of those things that, my mindset after had to really take some time to change and open up, especially years of Brave and seeing what they've been able to do for me, and then seeing what other promotions are doing for their fighters as well, going, oh, UFC might be the pinnacle or most popular, but this does not mean it's the best sport in the world. And I look at it in my consideration of during COVID, the UFC signed a lot of guys in different promotions because, traveling overseas was very difficult. So Amir Albazi, one of the guys I beat, and I'm his only loss, I believe is ranked number 7 or number 9 in the world in the UFC. And I'm like, when I was in the UFC, I wasn't even ranked. And I felt like I beat him no problem. Awesome. He's ranked. You look at Kazmat Chimaev. He was about to make a title run for Brave, and now he's top 3 in the world in his division in the UFC. You look at Muhammad Mokaev, again, about to make a title run in the flyweight division in Brave, and now is breaking the top 15 in the UFC. It's like, dude, this is awesome. So I'm not saying UFC is the pinnacle of sport. They have good fighters, but definitely not the best. They just bring in some of the best fighters from different promotions because, again, a lot of these fighters have a UFC contract clause, and cool, that's what they want to do. But at least from my experience coming from the UFC, going to other promotions, man, I've been treated drastically so much better. And now I actually have time to train for fights and cut weight and all that stuff. It is amazing. And Brave has been able to put up with a lot of stuff that I've done with backing out of fights from injuries, with my father passing, missing the weight and stuff like that. And still how well they treat me because they know they need fighters. They need popular fighters. They want good, talented people and human beings to be in their promotion. I'm happy to be part of that group. And they treat me really well for it. And I'm very fortunate, man.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a great breakdown on a technical level of, different promotions. I mean, it's amazing, man, because I mean, the thing is, when you're answering questions, there's so many different topics contained inside one topic. If I went off on tangents, we'd be here all day, like type of thing, But yes, it's a really good way of breaking it down, objectively, not subjectively, and breaking down the sport. The only thing I'll comment on there, yeah, the whole pay thing. I mean, you hope to see that change. I mean, I personally, I started working originally with boxing. I've been around like Tyson Fury, Floyd Mayweather, and some of those guys, and the money difference is just, well, I mean, and I'm not even like a big fan of like Jake Paul and some of those guys at all, really.
Mm-hmm.
But some of what he says about the fight or pay thing, hopefully that shift will continue to happen as a sport as a whole. That's not even a question for you. I'm just putting that out there. I mean, we've talked about a lot, and actually, actually, the time's flown by very quickly. Now, I tend to keep these to about an hour for people's attention span, so we'll move into the last couple of things, pretty much the
Hmm.
last two or three things now for for the sake of time and everything, and out of respect for your time as well. I said right at the beginning about like talking about your physical training and your day-to-day training and things, and I completely forgot about it because we went off into the mindset, we went off into some other cool stuff and everything like that, which is totally cool. I do want to touch on it though, because even though obviously MMA and sports in general, it's got it's got a massive mental edge. You have to have a mental edge. You still have to be physically tough as well. And I'm kind of doing this in reverse of how I usually do it. I usually start with the physical, move into the mental, but it's cool. Your daily regime, I mean, is something that is pretty. It's going to be almost probably a bit mundane to you because it's what you do every day. But just getting an insight into the discipline it takes to compete at your level, walk us through what your average day looks like. I don't know how much of this you want to share. I don't want to give anything away that people can
Hmm.
use, but yeah, in terms of your training, let's touch on that as one of the last things, please.
My training definitely varies on different types of days, especially in MMA. Some days are jiu-jitsu days, some days are stand-up boxing, or some days are full MMA sparring with small gloves. Some days are more just strength and conditioning or active recovery days to give my body some time to rest, but also keep that cardio going. And then some days are nothing, and I've learned, I think, and I won't get specific when it comes to my training because it is definitely very, very different depending on the day. But one thing I've learned from TJ Dillashaw when he was champion in the UFC, I used to train with him. I helped him get ready for John Lineker and Cody Garbrandt and stuff like that. The biggest thing with training with him and practically, in a sense, living with him day by day is he would train so intensely in some days, and then the next day I have that Rocky mindset where like all you see is a training montage. That's me every single day in my early 20s. And then as I started to get older, my body couldn't reciprocate that. It couldn't, I was motivated, but it just couldn't keep that up. And him being a little older than me, he would go, Shorty, like you're coming to sparring and you're tired. I was like, oh, I ran 5 miles yesterday. I feel good. I'm bragging about it. He's like, yeah, but you don't look good today. Your body's not keeping up. Are you stretching? Are you doing this? Are you eating well? Are you taking care of yourself? This is you. It's okay to rest. And obviously in the movies, especially cartoons and anime, these guys are always training. They're breaking their bodies. Batman doing this, doing that. But the fact is, you have to, we're all human. And sadly, I hate saying that, but we're all human. We all have to take rest days. Some people are stronger than others, and some people are able to push more, and that's great. But if you don't take care of your body, it's going to slowly start to break on you. And I can tell you from experience, I have two bad knees now. I've been training since I was 4 years old. I have 100 plus wrestling matches, 50 plus Muay Thai kickboxing. I think I'm at 39. I'm at almost 40 MMA fights. My body's taking a beating, and a lot of my fights are me coming back to win. So I've had cuts, lacerations, broken hands, broken limbs, torn, ligaments and stuff like that. I'm still recovering from a lot of stuff now, but I'm also training leading up to a fight. So if my body needs rest, I have to 100% listen to it and rest. If I need to stretch, which I 100% say to every person, especially in their teens and the early 20s, stretch. Because man, when I was 21, I remember practicing with a guy who was 30, and I'm like, oh, you got to warm up, you got to do all this, and he's just like, watch me reach my age, you'll feel it, and I'm like, oh, this is what he means. Damn, karma. It finally caught up to me, and it's not just catching up to me; it's also breaking me. Where I'm starting to think like, how many more years of this sport do I have left? In my mindset, especially with the way I fight, every fight could be my last. So let's make every fight count, no matter what's happening in my life, no matter what my mental state is, no matter what's going on. I have to push through like it's my last because once the sport is done, it's done. But I can tell you when my hard days are going, I'm training twice a day, eating 4 meals, maybe two snacks with it, and keeping, a gallon of water, if not a little more, with me. Um, on my rest days, sometimes I'm doing just one little workout, cardio workout for an hour, doing a nice light jog, not trying to do it for time, just trying to finish the whatever distance I want to go, going on the bike, and then sauning and then stretching for about half an hour. I'm trying to take care of my body. And some days when I'm doing nothing, I literally do nothing. I try my best to stay in my room all day, forget about people, and I call it me day. If I want to go out and do something, then I go out and do something by myself because my life is revolved around entertaining people and putting my body through hell. So sometimes I need to just be by myself. And I'm a huge extrovert. Sometimes I love people, but hey, man, I put a lot out there already. So I just want to be by myself and take care of my mindset, because without my mindset, without a proper operator in here, this machine isn't going to work. So I need to make sure this is okay so everything else can function the way I want to. No one likes a job, half done. People want it fully accomplished. And even though it might not be accomplished, at least I was able to give it 100% compared to not trying at all. So for me, is being able to listen to my body is the first and foremost thing. And I think that is the smartest thing possible. But when it comes to a diet, you have to eat clean. And if you're not educated, hire a nutritionist. Save your money, hire a nutritionist, because that's going to help out a lot.
Yeah. I love that because, it's like a holistic approach that you touched on there, so it's obviously the mind body unison. As you know too well, I mean, they have to both be in a good way. If your mind down, pull your body down. If your body down, pull your mind down. They both have to be good because they're connected, but also the holistic approach to the body as well. Love that. And I just, had to touch on that because it is a physical sport at the end of the day. And we've talked about a lot of the cerebral side of things. We're wrapping up shortly. One thing to touch on that you said there, and obviously your MMA career I followed extensively, your wrestling I was aware of. I didn't know you had that many kickboxing fights, so I'm going to be straight up about
Yeah.
that. I knew you'd had a few, but I didn't know it was as many as 50. So that's a very cool. I'm glad we got to get that in there as
I,
well.
I think if you're going to be an MMA fighter, so this is what we did with Curtis Blades. So Curtis Razor Blades started at my gym when he turned professional, and he left because we didn't have any big guys to help him get ready. So it was definitely very appropriate for him to leave. But the big thing for him, he just wanted to turn pro because he was out wrestling everyone in MMA fights and then beating them up on the ground. The only problem is he had no submission game and he had no stand up. It was very, very minuscule. And we're like, you know what? Let's go to this tournament down in Florida for a kickboxing match. You're bigger, you're a little older. How about this? If you win this tournament, you can go pro. We're not going to stop you. But if you lose, you got to take a few more fights and then we'll do it again. And so he took the bet. He's like, all right, let's do it. He goes in there and he had a hard time. His gas tank was different. Striking conditioning is very different from wrestling conditioning. Same thing with swimming. Same thing with everything else. And he went in there, panicked a couple times, but won his 2 matches and became a champion in kickboxing. And it's like, dude, that's phenomenal. You know what? You won the bet, go pro. Then when he decided to go to different gyms, that's all he worked on was a stand-up game because because he was a national champ wrestler, his mindset is always to be a champion. So he decided to work with high-level people in Denver and go, I'm going to work on my stand-up 100% because my wrestling will always be there. So he wanted to work at different things. So for me, being an MMA fighter, cool, wrestling is first and foremost my go-to. But if I can't take someone down, I have no choice but to stand up with them. If I can't outstrike someone, then I have no choice but to take them down. If I can't do either, then I have to make it a very dirty fight. And sometimes I have to learn how to fight dirty too. Make it a phone booth type of fight or this and that. So there's different aspects to the sport. And this is why it's called mixed martial arts. And you have to change your mindset, but you have to try those things and get good at all of them so you can be a well-rounded MMA fighter. This isn't like the UFC first started, just Royce Gracie versus, whomever. It's stylistically well-rounded guys versus other stylistically well-rounded guys. This is why Islam Makhachev is like a 2.0 Khabib Nurmagomedov because he can strike as well. And then Nurmagomedov's cousin who can do all the above, So we'll see where the sport goes, but it keeps on growing because everyone is doing everything, and that's the point of it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, I remember a quote, and again, I'm not going to say verbatim, but Joe Rogan did say something once about like how martial arts has evolved more in the last 30 years. It's evolved in like 2,000 years previously, or words to that effect. And that's 100% true because as everyone's finding out what works, what doesn't work, dropping certain pieces out, adding other pieces in, the science is evolving. I mean, it's just incredible. It's like watching human evolution in a sense
Mm-hmm.
of like how much people are understanding their bodies and developing. It's extraordinary. We've talked about a lot. So the last thing really that I'm going to touch on here is obviously the fans and the people who support you. Now, I usually close out these interviews with that because obviously the sport is nothing without those people. And basically, well, it depends on the individual. Some fighters say how much they appreciate them a lot, some don't. Depends. whatever. I like to close out with it. So those people out there around the world who support you, follow your fights, encourage you on social media, whatever form that support comes in, what would you say to those people around the world who essentially by following your fights, they've made it possible for you, even though obviously you're the one putting the work in, but they're the one getting the eyes on the sport. What would you say to those people around the world? And that's pretty much it for the day.
Two things is I'm very extrinsically motivated. So if no one wants me to do something, I'm probably not going to do it, yeah, especially if you're important to me. But if the crowd is, supporting me and wanting me to win, wanting me to succeed, and motivating me to do so, I'm a positive feedback type of guy. 100% words of affirmation are a huge thing to me. If you tell me I'm doing a good job, then it makes me want to do it more. If I'm doing a bad job, I'm kind of, I'm a little insecure sometimes. I'm like, I don't want to do this. So, with people supporting me and motivating me outside the cage is a huge thing because I do this for people's entertainment. And also, with that being said, if they're not supporting me in any sort of way, like watching my fights, following me on Instagram or social media and all that stuff, especially now with social media days, if I have no numbers that are behind me, then I can't sell tickets. I can't show promotions that I can sell tickets. So why am I worth signing to that promotion? Again, Logan Paul and Jake Paul, even though they're not phenomenal fighters, they're good enough and people still believe in them and support them so much enough that they're going to buy millions of tickets and there's going to be millions of dollars of revenue into that pocket. And so I'm not saying that's for me, but I'm saying that's for shows. And when I fight someone who also is as popular, like I might gain some fans, I might lose some fans, I might whatever, but we are both able to make a living out of it. So without people supporting me, I'm not able to do what I do. And that's why I always do say in my quote, we can, we will, together we are Team Shorty, because even though I'm inside the cage by myself, leading up to it, whether you're physically helping me or even just mentally helping me, you're helping me nonetheless. And that's all that matters. I mean, I can't do it without people's support, whether it's, again, watching the fight, being there for me, telling me I'm doing a good job, petting me and calling me a good boy. I'm happy with it, So I'm a dog at heart. So it's a huge, huge thing, man. And I think again, that's why I say Team Shorty, because again, it's not just me going in there, it's everyone, and everyone's a part of my team that supports me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that I love to give that a mention. I mean, I know obviously you do a lot of that, so I knew it was going to go in that direction, but it's really good to give people a mention. I do that most interviews. So thank you. I mean, wow. I mean, today, we've gone in depth. We've talked about some really good stuff. We've talked about some deep stuff. And I know there's always more we can talk about in terms of like specific fights and things, but like in terms of the mindset stuff, I'm very happy. I think this could lend itself to like a part two, down the road and everything.
Yeah.
You could be open to it. But for now, we'll get this one out there and make that happen. Thank you for being an open book. Thank you for speaking from the heart. I know you do anyway, but I'm just saying that for this. Obviously, we are going to a deeper level of things. So thank you for just, well, that's the only way I can think of to put it, really, just being an open book. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it personally. I don't always say that, just it varies. I really have enjoyed it. I hope you have as well. And just thank you for your time. I mean, that's the last thing to say, really.
Well, I appreciate your openness. I appreciate your willingness to listen and give me the time and space to do so. And the questions are great, so it helped me, do all the things I was able to do today. And I appreciate it, man. And I'm excited for part two. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again. And like I said to you at the beginning, I hope it's different to the average interview that's out there. My ones usually are. So that's I see that as a compliment. But yeah, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.